The Equal Rights Amendment has been fully ratified by 38 states as the 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution, but unfortunately, opponents of the ERA are continuing to spread misinformation about the amendment. It's time to set the record straight and debunk some of the most common myths about the ERA. Myth: the ERA missed a deadline, so it can't become part of the Constitution. Reality: time limits are not part of the Constitution's Article 5 amendment process. Article 5 deals with how the Constitution can be amended. According to Article 5, once two-thirds of the House and two-thirds of the Senate have approved a proposed amendment, it then becomes a matter for the states. Article 5 says that a proposed amendment shall be valid when ratified by three-fourths of the states. Nowhere in Article 5 is there any mention of Congress setting deadlines for ratification. Nowhere. The language says an amendment shall be valid when ratified by three-fourths of the states. If our nation's framers had wanted to give Congress the power to put a deadline on ratification, they would have said so, and they did not. Also, history shows that constitutional amendments can take time. The 27th Amendment, which deals with congressional pay raises, was first proposed in 1789, but it wasn't ratified until 1992. That's a 203-year gap between proposal and ratification. Myth: 5 states rescinded their ratification of the ERA, so the amendment never reached the required number of states. Reality: there are no takebacks when it comes to amendment ratification. The Constitution does not give states the power to take back a ratification once it has been submitted, and there is an important reason for this. Think of the chaos that would ensue if states began taking back ratification of an amendment. If states were able to rescind their ratification of an amendment, there would be a level of uncertainty in the amendment process that would lead to absolute chaos. Simply put, Article 5 gives states the power to ratify constitutional amendments, but it does not give them the power to rescind that ratification. There is also historical precedent for this principle. When states attempted to rescind their ratification of the 14th Amendment, those rescissions were not accepted, and the amendment was ultimately upheld. Myth: because the Department of Justice and the Archivist have refused to recognize the ERA, the amendment is not valid. Reality: neither the Department of Justice nor the Archivist has the authority to make legal determinations about a constitutional amendment's validity. The DOJ's opinions do not carry the weight of the law. The archivist's role in the amendment process is merely ministerial. That means the archivist is responsible for carrying out the administrative duties associated with the amendment process, not deciding which amendments are valid. Neither the Department of Justice nor the archivist is a gatekeeper to the Constitution. The American Bar Association and leading legal scholars have recognized that the ERA has satisfied the requirements of ratification. Now it is time for Congress and the judiciary to do their jobs. Myth: ERA opponents like to argue that the amendment is nothing more than symbolic, that it is just some fancy language thrown about to satisfy a liberal constituency. Reality: the ERA is the only place in the Constitution that directly prohibits sex discrimination. The ERA states that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. This language is a clear ban on sex discrimination, and placing it in the Constitution is important. There are statutes that prohibit sex discrimination, sure, but a statute can be repealed with just a majority of both the House and the Senate and a president's signature. In other words, all it would take is 51% of both houses to do away with any civil rights law. A constitutional amendment can be rescinded only by passing a new amendment. That is why constitutional law is the highest law of the land. When you value something, you don't just leave it someplace where it can be stolen or broken. You put it in the safest place you can find. The Constitution is the safest place for women's equality, which is the paramount reason why the Equal Rights Amendment is more than just symbolism. The Equal Rights Amendment has a long and complicated history, but one thing is clear: misinformation continues to shape the conversation around the ERA. The questions surrounding deadlines, rescissions, and the archivist's role are legal questions that continue to be debated, and legal battles are a normal part of the constitutional process. Ultimately, the courts will have the opportunity to address these questions. The Equal Rights Amendment represents a constitutional commitment to equality. It's time to know the facts, it's time to understand the history, and it's time to set the record straight about the ERA.